Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm Diana. I'm the owner and creator of the Build-A-Quilt system. And here at Sew in Common, we're the home of the Build-A-Quilt system. We create beautiful quilts and quilt blocks using the hoop of our embroidery machine. And so today, that's what this video is all about. Going over how to create the most simple, or often used, I should say, block that we use in quilting, and talking to you about a lot of the tools and things that you're going to need. There's actually very few. They're very simple little tools, and if you're already a stitcher in some way, you probably have some of these. If you're already a quilter and you want to work your way over to quilting with your embroidery machine and piecing your quilts that way, then you may have them already as well. But if you don't, these tools that you need are relatively inexpensive, and you can probably find them at any local shop in your general area. So today, like I said, we're home of Build-A-Quilt. We have our first big block set available, and it gives you three of the most often used blocks. The half square triangle, the most often used block in quilting; the quarter square triangle, which is kind of the half square triangle, but in four, right? Pretty simple. And the square. Now you're probably saying, well, why would you just want to do a regular square? Well, there's a few reasons. Part of the reason this system works is because it's all measured for you in the design. So when I've digitized these different, what we call segment blocks, these are segments, that's a full block or a full square, then it's great to have them all be exactly the same. And that's what the system gives you. So even doing your solid squares is best for that. And the other reason being is that your segments are sewn together on your sewing machine. Now, before anybody gets all excited and upset going, no, I don't want to do it on my sewing machine, I can't do the quarter inch. I get you. I hear what you're saying. Let's talk about that quarter inch for a second. A quarter inch is the seam allowance that we use in quilting. And it's just that sweet spot of a seam allowance. When you sew garments, you typically use a 5/8 seam allowance. When you do things like bags and other kinds of projects, 3/8 seam allowance gets used a lot. Well, in quilting, we use a quarter inch. And with our sewing machine, which is not the most traditional way to quilt, the most traditional way to quilt is sewing those seams by hand. Well, thank goodness the sewing machine came along and we don't have to do that anymore. And now we don't have to worry about that either, because we can do that piecing with our embroidery machine. So the quarter inch, a lot of times you'll hear terms like quarter inch or scant quarter inch or a fat quarter inch. Well, goodness sakes, which is it, right? So when I learned how to quilt from my grandmother over 50 years ago, there was no scant, there was no fat quarter inch. She said, you just have to learn how to do an accurate quarter inch each and every time. And boy, did I do nothing but sit there and hand stitch a lot of quarter inches. And then my grandma would we would measure them and go, yeah, you're doing better, you're doing better. Because I remember my original quarter inches looked more like 3/4 inches. So they can be confusing on our sewing machines. There's lots of techniques to help you measure and get it right and all, but we don't have to worry about that when we piece with our embroidery machine with the Build-A-Quilt system, because there's a guideline built right in. While you're stitching, you don't even know you're doing it, but it's building in a guideline for you that's going to help you sew those blocks together. Let me just take our solid block here and flip it over. So I've taken a Sharpie. I know, bad on me to use a Sharpie, right? But I wanted you to be able to see this line, this black line here. That line really goes all the way around that block. So when I'm sewing two blocks together at my sewing machine, I'm just putting two here together for you. When I'm sewing two together, both of my blocks have that line on them. So if I just put them together and do a little quilt clip on there and trace right down that line with my sewing machine needle, I don't need a 1/4 inch foot for my sewing machine. I don't have to measure a 1/4 inch out, make sure I get it right. I don't have to worry about, do I need a scant 1/4 inch or a fat 1/4 inch, whatever those are. I do know what those are, but a lot of you don't. So I don't want you to worry about them. But I don't have to worry about that because I'll get an accurate seam allowance each and every time. And that's the important part. So I like to tell brand new quilters, I've taught quilting with your sewing machine for years and years. And I like to tell folks that when you first start, you need to try and be as accurate as you can, but you're not going to get that 1/4 inch perfect every single time. In fact, over all the years I've been quilting, there are times if I sit down to my sewing machine, I still don't get my 1/4 inch exact every single time. Part of it is that my eyes aren't as good anymore. Part of it is that I get excited to get finished and I don't pay as much attention as I should. But with the Build-A-Quilt blocks in the hoop, I don't have to worry about that. As long as I can put those in there, trace that line with my sewing machine needle, I get my accurate seam allowance. And accuracy, quilting is an art form built around accuracy because it's built around that 1/4 inch. And what that allows is that if you do that 1/4 inch throughout your piece, you're going to get an accurate full-size piece. Your rows will come together correctly. Your larger 4-patch squares, so say you take 4 of those and put them into one bigger square. Everything comes together accurately when you're as consistent as possible with that 1/4 inch. And it can be difficult. And I know a lot of you have written to me and said, Diana, I like the Build-A-Quilt system because I've tried and I can't get that 1/4 inch. Now, I bet you might be able to eventually, but I know that a lot of times when we start to quilt, we want to be able to do it right away and get our quilts done and make beautiful quilts, right? Well, that's what I hope our system will help you do. And the other reason I created Build-A-Quilt is I have a lot of friends, like hundreds and hundreds of friends that love the idea of quilting, love the art form, but they're really only into using their embroidery machine. That's okay. That's cool. So with this system, you can do that. And you only have to do that tiny little bit of sewing at the end. So not bad at all. Here at Sew in Common, we also do finish quilting, the actual quilting at the end. We'll talk about that in another video. But today, like I said, I want to show you how and demonstrate for you how to do a half square triangle. Because in the Build-A-Quilt system, you're going to get 4 sizes of the half square, the 1/4 square, and the square. So you've got 4 different sizes that you can use, 2, 3, 4, and 5-inch finished squares. So cool, you've got a lot. And then the third reason that I wanted to create this Build-A-Quilt system for you all is because, and not just for you all, for me, I use it. Everything you see here, all these samples I'm going to show you, all made with the Build-A-Quilt system. And the other reason I wanted to do that was because I wanted to be able to take quilting patterns that are out there on the market for sale, and I wanted to be able to make them with my embroidery machine. So with this first system, we also do some videos here at Sew in Common called Quilts in Translation, because some quilts have other parts. Like if we look at this one right here, this feathered star, this is done with 2 half square triangles. But normally, under a traditional quilting method, it would be done with something called a flying goose block. And we don't have that in the system yet. But here's a tip for you. It's coming. It's still coming before the end of 2023 because we have another set coming. And we have new sets coming in 2024. So eventually you'll have all the basic segment blocks that you're going to need to create all the quilts that you want to create. And of course, with our embroidery machine, if we decide that we want to do quilts with applique, well, of course, we can do that with our embroidery machine today. That's another video coming as well later on. So let's set our segment blocks aside And let's talk for a moment about some of the blocks that you can create. Let's start by looking at what's behind me. So this is a feathered star. It's a basic one round feathered star. Feathered stars can be really big. You can make a whole full-size quilt from one feathered star because you just continually add on to it. So that's fun. And then this star block here, I think this is my shooting star block. A lot of our patterns this year in 2023, all of our blocks of the month have been free. So later when I share our information about how to get our basic block set, you'll notice when you go to our website, you can get a lot of free blocks as well. And they're not necessarily the same size as the sizes you get in the set. So you will actually have a few extra different sizes of things as well, which is nice. And then behind us there, you'll see our snowball table topper. That was actually a contest we did this year. And I've got photos of our winner topper, which I'll be showing in an upcoming video. So you'll want to check those out. And we also did this year the log cabin and the courthouse steps and the log cabin variation. And we did this block here. And so this piece here. So those are just a few of the things we've done this year. A couple of months ago, our block of the month was this one that I created that I call Mirror Mirror. Starts with the one little block in the center. So if you start now, it kind of is to remind you of those waves, how they go out, right? Or how when you look down into a pool, things just get deeper and deeper. So I call that Mirror Mirror. We also did this. This is called a crossover star. Isn't that one pretty? We've also done some we did one whole month where I think we ended up doing 3 or 4 different stars that month, but they were all based on the same segments and they were all part of our basic star blocks. And a lot of times when folks start to quilt, they start either with a log cabin or they start with star blocks. So we did this one here. Isn't that fun? Yeah, if you're a Tula lover, you'll notice that's Tula pink fabric. I love Tula's fabric. And then here's another one that we did. And then here is our last star that we did. And then we've also done the quatrefoil block, and this is a variation that I created of the quatrefoil block too. That's just some of them that we've done this year. So there's lots of different blocks that you can do with our original set and with those free blocks that are on our website as well. Okay, so to start, I want you to know that all you really need besides your embroidery machine or the embroidery module that goes with your sewing machine, if you have a combo system, is a 5x7 frame. Now, some of these can be made with a 4x4 hoop. So if that's all you have, then I suggest go ahead and get that basic block set because you can do at least half of those blocks, if not 3/4 of them, with that 4x4 hoop. And if you start making your quilts and all with those smaller blocks, because some quilts only use 2-inch finished squares. I've seen those. There's a quilt out there, I think it has like 2,500 little 2.5-inch finished squares, and that's all it is. Holy moly, that's a lot of finished squares, right? But it's a beautiful quilt. So you can do a lot. There's literally hundreds of quilts that you can do just with the half square triangle. So if you get the set and you are using only your 4-inch hoop, your quilts and things would be small, slightly smaller, but you can build them out to be larger. And then if you decide that you love it, you'll eventually want to move up to a machine. You don't have to have the biggest, most expensive machine because for quilting, really, you just need very basic features on your machine. And you'll get a machine that has at least a 5x7 hoop because for our basic set 1 and the sets and the free blocks we've done this year. The 5x7 hoop is all that you're going to need. And then we are going to have some expansion packs coming out that are going to have slightly bigger component blocks in them, or segment blocks in them. Our first one of those will come out in 2024. And I'm only doing expansions to a certain size because typically your segment blocks of your quilt patterns never get really much bigger than 6x6, 7x7, something like that. That's going to, if you're making this block and every single block is 7x7, you're going to have a huge quilt. Now, that would be fun, right? That would be super fun. But a lot of times when you buy pre-printed quilting patterns, just general quilting patterns, the segments aren't bigger than the 5x5, the 6x6 maybe. So we are going to do some extensions, basically because you all asked for them. A lot of you have already asked, can we get some expanded sizes? So that's coming in 2024. But for the set, the basic set we have now, there are so many quilts you can make, so many quilts you can design for yourself. Are you one of those folks that have been really dying to try your hand at designing your own quilt? Well, you'll have everything you need with the Build a Quilt system to do that. All right, so got our 5x7 hoop. The next thing we'll do is go under our camera, and we're going to talk about stabilizer. And I have a whole stabilizer video that I will attach at the end of this video. And I highly recommend that you watch it because it's really going to give you the best benefit for how to remove stabilizer from your blocks. Because with the Build a Quilt system, we highly recommend that you use a traditional wash away stabilizer. You could use the no-show mesh or a cutaway. I do not recommend a tearaway. Because in this kind of a system, we're only dealing with run stitches. It's very easy with a tearaway to tear your stitches right out as well. A cutaway is going to stay in your quilt typically, and that's fine, but you're going to have bulk there. But by using wash away, these blocks have all been done with wash away stabilizer in them, and the wash away has been washed out. So you can see the back of that, the wash away. So all I'm dealing with when I go to put these together into my full quilt and do the quilting is my fabric and thread, just as if I had pieced it on my sewing machine or pieced it by hand. So I will attach that video to the end of this video so you can just click the link and watch it. I think it'll be really helpful for you. So let's go under our other camera. Let's talk about stabilizer and some of the basic tools that we need. Then we're going to go over to the machine, and I'm going to introduce you to the process of making a half square triangle in the hoop, so that you can see the basic process. Now, the basic process is something that you might have heard of before called flip and stitch. So I call it stitch, flip, and stitch again, but it's that same idea as flip and stitch. And so we will do that at the machine, and then we'll see what else we have time for this video, and then we'll come back to the end and I'll share with you how you can get your system, your Build a Quilt system, and all about how you can get your free block patterns too if you want to try those out. So let's go over to the other camera right now. Okay, so here we are at the cutting area, and in this section of our video we're going to talk about tools and how we cut our fabric. So some basics there. So as you can see, I have my hoop. We recommend a 5x7, but as I said before, you can do at least half the blocks with a 4x4. So if that's all you have, you can still make your quilts and make your segment blocks with a 4x4, but the bigger sizes won't fit in your 4x4. But like I also said, you're going to want to eventually have a machine with a 5x7 hoop. And I'm pretty sure most machines come with a 5x7 hoop these days. Some of the like introductory ones that you get through like your craft stores and your big box warehouses, sometimes those will come with only a 4x4, but I'm pretty sure in just about any machine you're going to get at your fabric shops through your dealerships are going to come with that 5x7, and that's what we recommend. Okay, So stabilizer, there really are three types of stabilizer you could use, but one specifically that I recommend. If you want something 100% natural in your quilt, um, the lightest weight muslin that you can find works beautifully as a stabilizer. It will remain in your block. So as you can see on the back here, this still has stabilizer in it. I haven't removed it yet. Your muslin will remain in the block. That will add a little bulk to your overall piece, but it will also add extra warmth. So if you need extra warmth, that might be a way to go. However, you will want to make sure and trim out the stabilizer, the muslin, around the edges in the seam allowance. That'll take you a tiny extra bit of time, but that's okay. This is not an event built for speed. That just takes out that bulk, okay? And that's something you'll want to do, especially where your pieces come together at the corners. Wouldn't be so from here to here, not that big of a deal, but here to here on your corners, so you might just want to trim out that amount on your corners if you use a leave-in stabilizer. The other leave-in stabilizer is a poly mesh or a cutaway general embroidery stabilizer. But the one we highly recommend is a good general wash-away stabilizer. The kind that we use for freestanding lace in our embroidery works beautifully. And in the end, it gets completely washed away and there's nothing left there. You're only sewing together then your segments. And then when you're quilting, you're only quilting over that fabric. So I like using pre-cuts because they're made to fit perfectly in a 5x7 frame. That allows me to save a little bit of time. Like I said, this is not an event built for speed, but I like that it allows me to just sit down and get started. I don't have to go and start cutting. When I was using stabilizer on a roll, I would cut it all. I'd cut the whole roll so I would have my own pre-cuts. You could do that as well. But I find my stabilizer on Amazon, and it's pre-cut at 100 sheets, and it's a better price per hooping than if I cut it from the roll. I'll try to find that and put it in the description. Let me just give myself a quick little note. Stabilizer link. Okay, so I've got that there. Hopefully I will remember it. If I don't, forgive me, but I'll try to remember to link that at the end. And like I said in the introductory part of the video, I've got a great video on how to use wash away stabilizer that I will link at the end of this video. So let's just set that aside. Now let's talk about some basic tools. Some of these are optional. Some of these I feel like are mandatory. And some of them are basically, you can decide what works best for you. But these are the ones I use that I've tried that I like the best. So let's start with the two things on the end. You're going to need a good cutting ruler, a nice one made for quilting. I personally like Quilter Select because it has this finish on the back, so it doesn't slide on your fabric. When it's on there, it's not going anywhere. So if I put my piece there and I put that there, that's not moving. This isn't sliding around on the fabric. See, it's sliding out here, but it's not sliding on that fabric. So when I'm cutting, I don't worry about this going off into different directions. Bit of a safety piece there. But other brands have coating type things on the back. There are little things you can stick to the back of your acrylic rulers to make them non-slip. So there's a product called Odie Coat, which is also by the same place that does the 505 spray, temporary adhesive spray. So anything like that, just a little safety there. But you will need something. I like the 3x12. That's the one I use most for cutting my fabric and for cutting my segment squares out of the stabilizer. Any brand, again, will do. So whatever you have, like I said earlier, you might have some of these things already in your sewing room or area. And if you don't, they're not overly expensive pieces. The other thing is you're going to need a 45 millimeter rotary cutter. Now, I like these ergonomic handles because I've had carpal tunnel surgery on both hands, but you can use a straight handle if you like. Now, a regular round blade looks like that. That might be something you already have. That works perfectly, absolutely fine. I prefer, though, a pinking blade. And why? It's because, let's look at this segment square. See all the little dips along the edge where it was cut? Every time that blade dips into the fabric, it's taking a little bit of bulk out of my seams. And getting the bulk out of the seams is every quilter's goal in life sometimes. So that's why I like it. I prefer the brand by Olfa. I like their blades. They last me a little bit longer, I feel, but any blade that you can get your hands on, give it a try. I think you'll like these. I will tell you that I think in the long term, the pinking blades need to be replaced a little bit sooner than a regular blade. Maybe I should time myself as far as like how many blocks I can do sometime, but I feel like I probably replaced this one. Maybe I get about 7/8 of the time that I get of this one. So it's not a big difference, but I feel like there's a little bit of difference even with these good blades, but it's worth it for me because I really like how this takes bulk out of my seams. So, but you will need a 45 millimeter blade, either with an ergonomic handle like this or a straight handle. And you can find those at your local fabric shop, your local craft shop that sells quilting and cutting supplies, or you can look on Amazon. They have tons of them. And Olfa carries their own brand handle. This is kind of an off-brand handle. I got it because I love the color. That is an Olfa one right there. So I'm pretty sure it's Olfa, right? Yeah, Olfa. Olfa is O-L-F-A, in case you're curious. The next thing I want to discuss is your scissors. Because you're cutting your fabric with a rotary cutter, this is mainly going to be used for cutting tiny bits of fabric and scissors, and threads. Sorry, of course they are scissors, and maybe giving a little cut on your stabilizer. The ones I like best are by Karen K. Buckley. They're the blue handled ones. You can tell these are getting kind of old, but I tell you, I have a pair at my embroidery station, my sewing machine station, and my big cutting table. And I have a pair that's in my travel bag because these are by far my favorite. And let me tell you why. One, they have a really good point on them. So you can get really in, say I want to get in here really close and do a little trimming for something. I can get right in there. And I just made a cut with that very tip of that blade because they're sharp all the way to the edge and they have that nice point on them. My favorite reason for these is this blade is a very fine micro serrated blade. You can't even see the micro serration on there. It's so fine. But what that does is it helps to keep your fabric from starting to fray. A lot of times our fabric frays is because we are using a dull blade on our rotary cutter or we're using dull scissors. And what that does, it actually is pulling on the threads rather than giving a clean cut. With the Karen K. Buckley and those micro serrations, they give you a clean cut each and every time. So I love those. Again, I'm not sponsoring any of these. I have no coupon codes for you. They are just my favorites, and I want to share that information with you. But feel free to use whatever you might already have. Now, those three things are must-haves. The rest of these things are optional with a star, okay? Things that I really think you should have, but if you don't keep yourself from starting the process. until you get them. Go ahead and start your process and get these when you can. One is a seam roller. Because this process is called flip and stitch, when you're laying fabric down, and you'll see this when we go over to the machine, you then flip it out and then stitch it down. And what I like to do when I do that is I like to take just a little seam roller, could be plastic, could be wood, and could be metal, and roll it. That way I don't have to have an iron at my machine. I don't have to have a wool press mat at my machine, anything like that. I just take that out, give that a good little press right there to keep it flat, and I'm good to go. This one is so old, I can't remember who even makes it. I know they're still out there. Oh, golly. But like I said, any little seam roller works. And I think that with piecing in the hoop, this will be your friend. Okay, so even though it's an optional, it's got 2 stars, 2 asterisk stars next to it, because I think it's really helpful. One is just a good stiletto. Now this one is an old Fons and Porter that I've had forever. However, you could use the end of a pen cap if you wanted, a pencil, whatever you want. If you have, I have a really great R&K turning tool. They're metal. I don't like to use those as much because I know if my needle hits that metal, that needle's broken. This is plastic covered. And so if the needle hits it and glances off of it, sometimes it doesn't break my needle. But what this is for, and I'll show you more at the machine, is you can hold down your fabric while it starts to stitch. Let me move those. While it starts to stitch, and it keeps your fingers from getting close to that needle, because trust me, you don't want that needle coming down and hitting your finger. You don't want it even just hitting your fingernail, because for one, it'll scare the life out of you. A good stiletto is good. It's also good to use these at your sewing machine. Anything that will help keep your fingers away from the needles. So again, optional, but highly recommended. And then the other thing that is really highly recommended, this one probably even has 3 stars next to it instead of just the 2, and that is a fabric glue stick. I have another video out on the website that I went over 3 different brands of glue sticks and found the one that I like the best, and it's by Bowen of France. So this is a French product, but you can order it here in the US. You can get them on Amazon. You can get them through the Fat Quarter Shop online. You might check with your local dealers and shops. They might carry this brand. I think this glue, the glue that comes with this one, works best. You can see in the video why I like it the most in the experiments that I did, but that's my favorite. However, any fabric glue stick you have, Fons and Porter makes one. If you have that one, use it. There's the pink one, Soline, I believe. Use it if you've got it. They're all fine. The glue in each one of them, I found little differences, and I settled. This was one that I had never even heard of until I used it in my experiments, and I ended up loving it the most. So you can check out that video as well when you have time. It's a short little video, but you need a fabric glue stick. If you're going to use a glue stick for school glue, you know what I mean. The little kids go back to school, they get the little chubby glue sticks. Please use good old-fashioned Elmer's. Please do not use a non-named brand Elmer's, one that looks like Elmer's but is from some non-brand company, because Elmer's is tested to be non-toxic and fabric friendly. So that one you're good with. Those little ones that look like Elmer's but aren't Elmer's, they work just the same way, and you might not see any problems with them now, but you might in the future, because I have a real suspicion they have a higher acid content in their glue, and that will eventually eat on your fabric. Even though you're going to wash it away, the technique that I use to get away my wash away stabilizer actually washes out this glue stick as well, and you'll see that even in the video. You'll see the little pieces of glue floating on the water. no problems there at all. And you'll see in the video, I talk about the whole ideas. Can you put this water down your drain? Blah, blah, blah. I talk about that for you. So I don't want you to get worried about that, because my plumber has said, because this stabilizer is made from starch, it's like dumping potato water down your sink. Now, you wouldn't want to do 30 gallons of potato water a day, but for washing this out, there should not be a problem. You can always go out and, I guess, do it outside, throw it outside if you want, but it doesn't hurt. I've been doing it in my kitchen sink for years. I've never had a single problem either. So, but I did check with my plumber. I wanted more than my anecdotal evidence. I wanted information from a professional for you, and he said it was fine. We stood there in my kitchen, did a little bit of testing and stuff, and he thinks it's fine. And he's been a plumber for 30 years, so that's good. All right, so these are things. This is the last thing I want to talk about, and that is tape, embroidery tape. You can use a fabric embroidery tape made of paper. That's perfect because it's low tack, low chemical. If you're one of the folks out there that likes to use medical tape, it's a little easier to find, a little less expensive by the roll, technically. Please get one that says for sensitive skin. For sensitive skin means, again, it's a low tack, less chemical. It's not going to hurt your fabric as much. Now, I know a lot of people use this in their regular embroidery, and for regular embroidery, it might not be a problem. But this is the reason you want to stick with low tack tape, again, for piecing in the hoop. That's because the only kind of stitch we're using is a straight stitch. We're asking our embroidery machine to do what our sewing machine does for us, but take out all the measuring and all that kind of stuff. So it does it for us rather than us doing it. But the thing with the straight stitch, if you have a heavy duty tape on there and you go to peel it off, it's very likely to peel out either your bobbin thread or your top thread, and your piece will come unraveled because it's too heavy. A lightweight sensitive skin medical tape or a fabric paper tape, like I'll just tell you, the one I like to use is the one from Kimberbell. It tears easily. I have a really hard time tearing tape, period, but it does tear easily. I just have a hard time tearing it across. I've never been able to do it in my life. But this kind of paper tape, the one from Kimberbell, is great, but any fabric paper tape works great. And they are low tack. So the tape you use for your regular embroidery is fine as long as it's low tack, sensitive skin, that kind of thing, because we don't want to be ripping out our stitches in this process, okay? And then there's one other thing, and if you've got really good eyesight, you won't need it at all. But if you're like me and you wear glasses, or if you want something where you can get a little magnification occasionally, you want to look at something, you're like, you know what, I want to get in there and I really want to see where I can trim that and not get, into my fabric or something. These little clip-on magnifiers, you'll see me put them on. Sometimes I forget to take them off and I look all googly-eyed on camera. They're really inexpensive. They're anywhere from like $6 to $10 for a pair. I keep like 4 or 5 pairs in my drawer because I will eventually break these, crack them. I keep a pair in my purse so they get scratched. If you looked at these, they've got scratches on them. I keep a pair in my travel bag, and I try to keep them in these little cases and stuff, but they will eventually, this pair I probably had for 2 years. The first pair I ever got, I made last for 4 years. I was so proud of myself. You can get them at Michael's Craft Store. You can also get them through Amazon. The ones through Amazon, check because they might have a magnification on there. So if you wear readers, you could get the magnification that matches your readers. I don't suggest getting more than a 2 times magnification. A 4 times magnification, especially if you have good sight, can give you a headache. So, but you don't need more than it. But these just clip on to your glasses like that. My glasses are dirty. And then you can see that magnification, see things closer up. So I like those so that I can work right there. I don't have to drag my bigger magnifier over. Completely and utterly optional. Alrighty, so those are the tools I wanted to suggest. Now I want us to talk about fabric and fabric cutting. So let's put our pieces there. So in the Build a Quilt system, I'm going to show you one sheet here that you get, because there's one of these for each type of segment block. And since I'm going to demonstrate the half square triangle for you today, that's what I'm going to show. These are what I call your cut sheets. They tell you what it is. They give you the abbreviation, and it shows you the piece. Now, they're in color. I just print mine out in black and white. That you have fabric A and fabric B, or fabric 1 and fabric 2, however it's denoted. And then it tells you what you're going to need here. And then it gives you a list. So if I want to do a 5-inch finished half square triangle, I'm going to cut a fabric 1 piece. I'm going to cut one fabric 1 piece at 7 inches and one fabric 2 piece at 7 inches. And each of the sizes tells you what to cut. And the reason so a 5-inch finished, you're going to cut 2 7-inch squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I've cut 6-inch squares here. So I'm going to be doing 4-inch finished blocks for us today, because I like to make sure you have plenty of fabric. This flip and stitch, you have to make sure when you flip that you get over your edge. So if this is your boundary edge right here, and you know you're going to be cutting about a 1/4 inch off the edge, you want to make sure that when you flip this over, you've got plenty of fabric out here. And if you've laid it down a little closer this way, a little closer that way, these cut sizes give you plenty. Is there a tiny bit of waste there? Only a tiny bit, because you'd be doing something very similar in your cuts for a more traditional quilting method, because you end up having to trim those down to square them up. You don't have to square up with the Build a Quilt system. So one of these and one of these, so fabric 1, fabric 2, this is going to make for me 2 half square triangles. Aha, very cool. I'm going to get 2 of these, because what I do is I go through and I cut out my fabric into the squares, and then your instructions will tell you to cut those pieces on the diagonal. Now, when I'm cutting these, I go ahead and use my regular rotary cutter. I don't use my pinking cutter because I don't really need to take bulk out. Now, this is a little laid on an angle because I'm a lefty. But then I just put my ruler at this corner and diagonally at the corner below. Let me get those there and there. Perfect. Then I take my rotary cutter and I cut right down that diagonal line. And now I have 2 sets. So I have a 1 and a 2 and a 1 and a 2. Now I can take these, and I just like to stack mine in sets like that, go over to my machine, and now I can make 2, based on this size that I've cut, 4-inch finished half square triangles. Cool. Like that. Love that, right? Very cool. So that's how you read your cut sheets, and you get one of those for the half square, the 1/4 square, and the square. Now I want to briefly talk to you before we go over to the machine about the 1/4 square triangle. And the only one I could find finished was my little 2-inch, but this is your smallest one in the set. This is a 2-inch finished. The 1/4 square triangle must be made in 2 pieces and sewn together on the machine using the guideline. And this is why. This is, like I said, using the flip and stitch method. If you use any flip and stitch method, this is how 1/4 squares or anything that has interior seams gets made. Let's think about it. Here's one piece, 1/4. Well, I could stitch that out, and I could attach this piece to it and flip it and stitch it. Cool. And I could attach this one over here and get 3 of them. But look what happens when you get to the 4th one. You can't flip and stitch this when all 3 of these are already put together because of this interior seam. But that's not a problem. What you're going to do is you're going to make 2 that look exactly the same. You're going to make them in the same order, 1 and 2, 1 and 2. because then when you trim them out of the stabilizer, you will stack them. And because you've made them in the exact same order, when I flip this over, look what happens when I flip it. This fabric comes over to this side and this fabric comes over to this side, so that when I line them up, and because I've done that, they're going to nest together really nicely. Do you see that nesting there? And then I would just take a little clip, a little quilting clip, and then I would go to my machine and stitch down that guideline. Then when I'm done, I'll flip it open. Ooh, I did that pretty good without stitching it. I folded that pretty good. Then I have my quarter square triangle. Okay, so very easy to do, but there is no method in which on an embroidery machine you can do an interior seam with the flip and stitch method. Someone got very upset with me that that was the case, but I'm so sorry. It just, there's no way to do an interior seam like that. If you wanted to do an interior seam, you could hand stitch those, I guess, or try to sew them on your sewing machine, but the whole idea is not to do that. So it's a very, very simple method. You just make your two halves, flip one over, nest them together, follow your guideline, and you've got your beautiful quarter square triangle. So I wanted to go over that with you, even though we're not going to stitch these out in today's video. I did want to discuss that because this is one of the blocks that you get in your set, and the other one are the squares. And you get, with the Build a Quilt system, a how-to video that goes through every single one and lots more detail. But there's so many new folks in our group. Over 15,000 now. Can I say that again? Over 15,000. I'm just so thrilled and blown away. You guys just, wow. If you only know how many times I've shed a tear of happiness that there are so many quilters out there that want to do this with me. I'm just thrilled. I wanted to show you that because you might be making the decision to buy the Build a Quilt system well, actually, if you're waiting to see this video, it has gone up to the regular price by now. So, but I wanted to show you that so that you would know what that was about. Okay, guys, so we've gone over tools. We've gone over how to cut our fabric, how to read a cut sheet, what kind of stabilizer I recommend, and what kind of a hoop I recommend. Now, a lot of you know that when I do my blocks, I don't use my 5x7 very often because my machine brand, whoops, let's get that back where it was supposed to be. There we go. My machine brand has a 6x6 hoop. And I'll just tell you about this really briefly. If you have a Brother or a Baby Lock machine, your manufacturer, and it has this type of an attachment arm, which is kind of the general attachment arm for their more modern machines, they have a 6x6 hoop, and it's perfect for all of the Build a Quilt blocks segments up through the 5-inch finished. It's perfect for it. So I use this a lot. It's really my favorite hoop. And again, the pre-cut stabilizer works beautifully with it. You can see that one's in there. This is the 4x4. A 5x5 would also fit in there. So this is my favorite. But because most machine brands don't have this, we recommend your 5x7. Like I said earlier, you can do multiples and larger hoops, but that's really a video for another day. In fact, I do have a video out there on doing multiples. I'll attach, that'll be my second video that I attach for you guys. So I'm going to attach the stabilizer video. I'm going to attach the multiples video. And I'm going to get the stabilizer link and put that in the description. I've just finished my note there, so I get all of that in the description for you guys. Alrighty, because I want you to have what you need. So now we're going to end this segment, and we're going to mosey on over to the embroidery machine, and we're going to make our first half square triangle. Let's go. Okay, my dears, here we are at my machine. I've got all of my little tools here. I always just keep them right here by my machine so they're all ready. I have my fabric laid out right here. I have, since I have one made, I always keep a segment square that the ones I'm working on, I keep one that's made right here. It helps me visually. I'm a real visual learner, and you might be as well. So having one that's already made sitting there for me is even more helpful than looking at my diagrams from the instructions. For one, it reminds me, like, where now with the half square triangle, you get two pieces of fabric. That's not a big deal. But with a more complicated block segment, sometimes I need like a visual reminder of what goes where. And so I always keep that sitting right there. Now I have my hoop loaded, and you can see I've got my embroidery stabilizer in there, my wash away. Let's briefly touch on thread. I'm piecing today in black thread. I'm using a regular white embroidery bobbin. It will work just fine for piecing. Can you use cotton thread? I know that's a question out there. I hear it coming through the mental wavelengths. Yes, you can. You can use a cotton thread and a cotton bobbin, but here is the absolute rule for me when I use cotton thread on my embroidery machine. After I'm done, I clean the bobbin case. I don't get up and go away. I don't go to the bathroom. I better make sure that I haven't drunk too much water or coffee, because I'm not getting up from this chair until I've cleaned my bobbin case. Cotton thread, even the beautiful Aurifil thread, which is made in Italy, which is the thread I use because it is very low lint, which is what you really want if you're using it in your embroidery machine, still gives off a little bit of lint. And lint can kill your embroidery machine if you don't keep it cleaned out. It's really bad for our regular sewing machines. So if you have a combo machine, you might be cleaning that case out sooner than you think, but you can use cotton. It will work. If I do cotton as my top thread, I always use cotton in my bobbin, but there's absolutely no problem with using embroidery thread. I've been doing it now for years. It works. It's beautiful. It doesn't have a problem with my fabrics. Because fabrics today are so well made and pre-shrunk gray goods, if you've got good quality fabric, you're not going to have to really worry about shrinkage. You'll see me talk about that in the stabilizer video. I just don't have a problem with it. And so I like to piece with a light gray. It really blends in. Again, it's one of these threads. It's kind of a chameleon. It blends in with your other colors. I save my pretty color threads and my glossy threads for my finished quilting. And I use a light gray typically. This is Isacord 0184, but and I've done a little shorts video on my favorite quilting thread color and the variations from other companies, and I've done one now on the piecing thread. So I like Isacord, but I've also talked about in that little video a couple of other brands that have similar colors. So anything like that. Today I'm just using regular black because I want you to be able to see it the best you can here in the video. All right, so my pattern is up here on the machine. The very first thing I do after I load my hoop is I'm going to stitch out my boundary box. This first piece is stitched out directly on your stabilizer, and the reason we do it is because it shows us exactly the boundary of the finished box or of the finished segment block. So we know that we are going to need to go over that when we flip and stitch so that we have enough fabric out here for trimming it out at the end. This one will do the whole piece, even the half size piece. So it's doing your boundary and it's doing your different halves for you. Now, step 2 on this block is to lay down your first fabric. When I'm doing half square triangles, I like laying down my lightest fabric first so that when I flip my next fabric over, the darker fabric, I don't get shadowing through. If I were to do this down here, so flip them like if they were flipped this way, and I flipped this yellow, I could maybe see the minty color through there. So by laying down my light fabric first, I won't see that. Here's where your glue stick can come in. I give a little swipe there just to have enough to hold it down. Now, the place I'm really concerned about is that I have fabric coming over this center line, roughly a 1/4 inch, might be a tiny bit more. And you're seeing I'm not measuring it because I can see the line through the fabric and I can feel the line through the fabric. I just want to make sure that I have enough. If I have too much, I'll trim it. The next step is to stitch down that fabric. Very simple. This whole half square triangle takes 2 minutes to stitch out if I'm not talking to you guys at 600 stitches per minute. Okay, so now with this particular block, there really isn't any trimming to do, but I do want to take this out and show you. If I had laid this out, so I've got plenty of fabric outside the boundary here, plenty outside the boundary here, so I know when I go to trim my 1/4 inch, which I'm going to show you under the other camera, I know that I'll have plenty of fabric out here. What about this line here? That technically is a little bit more than a 1/4 inch. It's fine. If it were more than that, then I would just take my scissors and I would just slice a little bit of it off in the hoop while it's still there. But if it's a little bit less, it's fine, but that works just perfectly. Now, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to lay down your second piece of fabric. So first pieces of fabric, there's really only one like really hard and fast rule, and that is first fabrics always get laid down right side up, or what I call the pretty side up. So if I'm doing a print, and this were my first fabric, I would always lay it down so I could see the print. I would never start it out right side down. I would always start it out right side up. Okay, so pretty simple there. That's all you need to remember about that. And then second pieces of fabric and all subsequent pieces. So this only has 2 pieces, but even if it had 4, after that first piece, all other fabrics are laid right sides together, all of them. So I'm just going to lay this down and I'm going to let just a wee bit of that under fabric show, because I know I was a little bit over on my 1/4 inch. That's fine. So I'm just going to let just like little threads show through there. Now I'm going to lay this back here. Now I kind of want to hold that there a little bit. See where my fingers are? Yeah, they're far away from here, but what if I forgot to move them? So this is where your stiletto comes in handy to hold that down. Whoops, hit the wrong button. There we go. Here we go. Now we're just going to stitch that down. My stiletto's just kind of gliding there to hold everything in place. And my fingers were never in danger. We like that, right? Alrighty. So now I'm just going to swipe a little piece of my glue stick right there. And now I'm going to do the flip. So I'm going to take this top piece of fabric. Let me reach around the back so you can see. And I'm going to flip it over. Just like that. Flip. And press it down. Now let's take this out. Here's where your seam roller will come in handy, because you can press that nicely down, even go over where your glue is. And this I can feel with my fingers. My fabric is beyond that boundary box, so I know I'm good there. And now I'm just going to stitch down the second half. And we're almost done. After this, we have one more piece to stitch, and I will show you why, and that's where our tape can come in handy. Okay, so when we stitch our blocks in the hoop, the way I've designed them is that at the end, we stitch down one more box. I call it the guideline box. It does two things. Once, it reinforces that line on the back that gives us our guide for seaming together, and it connects every place where the two fabrics come together. Okay, so I just take a little piece of my embroidery tape and I put it over those seam joins. I don't have to put it up and down all the pieces, just a small piece, because what can happen is when my foot is coming along here, it can get hooked on this right here and flip that fabric over and then cause all kinds of chaos, and we don't want that. So with that little piece of tape there around each join, I know that it's just going to stitch around. It's not going to get caught, and things are going to stitch out beautifully. And that tape will just peel right away at the end. Now, to be honest, you don't have to use tape. You could be in here with your stiletto, just holding that down at the joins. But sometimes with some types of blocks, especially with string piecing blocks, there are lots of little joins, and so it's a little bit harder. That's where your tape really comes in handy. And that is our last piece that had to be done on the machine. It's done. Now we can go and cut it out of our out of the stabilizer. Let me flip over the camera to our other camera, and we will do that thing. Okay, there we go. We've got the right camera. Now I'm going to flip over. There we go. Now we're back at our camera where we can cut this out. So I'm just going to take my stabilizer and my block out of my hoop. I love this little inset screwdriver that comes with my thing. I always keep that handy. And I will just set my hoop aside. Now, the first thing I do is I like to come in here and I like to peel off a little bit of the tape. You don't have to, but I like to. I don't like to use my rotary cutter over the tape if I don't have to. The tape will dull it quicker. But there are times when I forget. Maybe that's why I'm getting a little less time out of my pinking blade, huh? Because I forget sometimes. Even though this is low tack, please be careful. See how I just popped that little stitch up just a little bit? That was because I was really being rough with it. It won't be a problem because it's not the main stitch. It's that guide box stitch, but we want to be careful with that. So now I need my cutting ruler and I need my rotary cutter. I've just got a little piece of tape I want to get off my finger. Alrighty. So on your ruler, you can see this particular one has 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch, 3/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and so on. So it's marked in 8ths across your inch mark. We're interested in that 1/4 inch mark. If you can't see that mark well, there is a tape called highlighter tape. It looks like that. I have a friend who does this. She takes this tape and I need my magnifiers. Where are they? Okay, you can't see me, but I got my magnifiers on now. She takes and puts a piece over a stretch. That was my other camera. And then she takes a Sharpie on the tape, so not on her ruler, and she marks on the tape where that 1/4 inch mark is. It's easier for her to see that way. That might help you. It's just called highlighter tape. You might get it as an office supply. I got it in Amazon. I live in the country, so everything comes from Amazon. My Amazon driver and I are really good buddies. He's on the Christmas list. So what I want to do is I want to take and put these 1/4 inch marks right on my seam line, right on that guideline, all the way down, so that it's on every aspect. That tells me I'm lined up so that when I cut, I am going to get a perfect 1/4 inch seam cut. Now I'm just taking my rotary cutter, cutting that away. See, that's what I've cut away. And there we go. And then I do that around all 4 sides of my block. Now, what I do when I'm sitting here, because I like to do my stitching as efficiently as possible, this blade's starting to get old now. What I will do is I will piece all my blocks, then I cut all my blocks. I don't piece one, cut one, piece one, cut one. To me, that isn't the most efficient use of my time. But if this is the first block you've ever done, go ahead and stop and cut it out and have a pretty finished block. Sometimes it's exciting and inspirational to see something finished before we go on, because we've got that excitement built up, right? So we want to get that done. All right, there's my block cut out. Now there's one more trick that I do here to get a little more out of my corner seam. I take and I just come in. I don't go all the way up to the line because I don't want to be near the thread, but I come in and I just give a little diagonal cut right across the edge. So I know with my rotary cutter, I do basically this first little indent here, but that takes a little bit of extra out of my corner seams and gets those out of the seam allowance when they come together. And there I have a beautiful finished half square triangle, 4-inch finish. There's another 4-inch finished. Oh, look, when I laid it out, I'm already getting a pattern. That's exciting. And because when I cut my fabric, I cut enough to do 2, I can now reload my hoop with my stabilizer, go back to my machine, and make my next 4-inch cut. Isn't that great, guys? That's so much fun to do that way. I love it. And I hope you all do as well. So now I am going to remove, let's see. Okay, everybody, I'm back. So I had to stop the camera and restart. My microphone did something weird. So we're back though now, and we're ready to finish up. So here is the one that we started with. Here's the one that we've just done. And if you were following along and doing them with me, then congratulations, because you just made your first half square triangle in the hoop of your embroidery machine. And wasn't it simple? Wasn't it easy? Now you're excited. Now you want to get started on other things. I get that. So have lots of fun, especially if you've gotten ahead and gotten your Build-A-Quilt system. Have fun. Do your 1/4 square next. Do a square. Do all of them. Get that excitement out of your system and new excitement into your system, if that makes sense. Because once you know that you can do this and that you've enjoyed it, you've worked out any quirks that you were thinking about, then you're ready to go and start moving on to other pieces. And of course, we do have the free pieces on the website. If you haven't gotten the Build-A-Quilt system yet, please check it out over at our website. Please ask me any questions you need to ask me at support at sewincommon.com before you purchase, because our digital purchases are final. But I'm here to give you what I hope will be the best customer service experience that you can have, and answer all of your questions, and get those straight in your mind for you before you make that purchase. But if you have our Build a Quilt system and you like it, please send us a note and let us know. We'd love to know what you think. We do have a next set coming out still in 2024. I'm hoping to have it out before the holidays. It will build on what you already have, because remember, we're building a quilt. So this set started, you can make so many quilts with just this set, but you're going to want set 2, because it's going to build on the basic segments that are used in quilting. Oh, I got some. There we go. It's going to build on those basic segments, and so you'll be able to make even more quilts. It makes me so excited. I can't stand it. Whew. Okay. All right, everybody. I hope that this was helpful for our beginners. I hope that if you've been with us here for a while, this was helpful for you, because I updated a little bit of information. You might have noticed I updated the stabilizer part, things like that. So I have myself a note. I am going to link the stabilizer video at the end. I am going to link of course, I can't read it now. There's one on here I was going to link. I can't read it. And I'm going to give you the stabilizer link in the description for the wash away. Shoot, I'll figure out what that says, because I have another video I want to link for you here at the end as well. Can't read my own writing. If I walk away and come back, it'll pop right into my brain. That's bad when you can't read your own writing. All right, everybody, please, if you haven't already, I know that we have lots of people watching that have never subscribed. I hope that you will now click that subscribe button and join us here and become part of the Sew in Common family, because we truly can't do this or wouldn't do this without all of you. And we love having you as part of our family, truly. I don't say it if I don't mean it. So please click that subscribe button, click the little bell. That way you can set your notifications to know when I put out new content. And please post your photographs of all the stuff you're making over at our Facebook page, Sew in Common. Right? Same name, so easy to find us. But post your photographs over there. I really want to see the things that you all are making, because you will inspire me and you'll inspire other subscribers. And that's how you guys get to know each other and make good quilting friends for life. I just love it. I love this community so much. Please do that. And let's see, is there anything else I wanted you to know? No, there is not. Okay. Just checking. So until next time, everybody, have a great week. I look forward to answering any of your questions if you get a hold of me at support@sewincommon.com. And as always, go make some beautiful quilts. And when you do, you'll be sewing life beautiful. Bye, everybody.